Good morning, everyone out in internet land. It is a Thursday here in Binghamton, New York, and the sun is out. And I'm not lying this time. You know, sometimes I lie to you and tell you the sun is out because I remember when I lived in Colorado and it was so nice there and the sun shone all the time. But the sun's out today, so we will be walking the dog later. This is Yvonne DeVita from Smart Conversations. And today I have a very special guest who's going to talk to us about, well, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but one of the things we're going to talk about is her new book, The Adventures of Miss Twiggs and Company. Lucy Forsting, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.
And so let me tell you a little bit about Lucy because she's really fascinating. She lives in Palm Harbor, Florida, with her rescue cat, Cheyenne, and that's Shyanne. So I really like that, Lucy. My daughter's name is Margaret Ann with Anne. Not many people do that. She has been a practicing psychotherapist in Wisconsin and Florida for over 30 years, working with both children and adults. In addition, she is a Reiki master energy healer. She currently hosts the Synergy Connection Show, which is a podcast found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. The show helps listeners connect the dots between their physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual aspects. The Adventure of Miss Twiggs and Company is her first book and integrates her love of children and animals with her desire to help people create happy and rewarding lives. And Lucy, I love that last part, the happy and rewarding lives. Tell us a little bit about how the book came to you, or did you just wake up one day and say, I'm going to write this book called The Adventures of Miss Twiggs?
No, it didn't just come to me, and it was actually probably 30 years in the making.
Oh, wow.
I've been a therapist for a long time, and I recognized almost immediately that people lived a life of desperation, I would say, in many cases, because of their thoughts. You know, their thoughts created their lives. And because of their upbringing or because of maybe some trauma that happened to them early on in their life, they began to live this life that was not of their liking, but they didn't know how to get out of it because they didn't recognize that their thoughts were then creating the life they were living. So as a result of that, I was working with an orphanage actually when I first got out of graduate school. And a lot of the children that were dropped off there were because it was a single mom or a single dad and they just couldn't do it. And so they would drop their kids. And I think they told them, I'll be back for you. And then they never came back. And so those children had all kinds of trauma in their early days. And in some cases, I was able to work with like a reintegration process with a parent who got their lives back on track. Maybe they'd been alcoholic, maybe they'd been in drugs, and they were able to, come back and reclaim their children. But it was a sort of an integration between the child or children in some cases and the parent. Wow. So that was the beginning of my career. And then eventually I went on to, work with reducing recidivism with first-time offenders. I had a private practice. Before I left Wisconsin, I actually had 3 clinics in Northeast Wisconsin. So they were strategically placed so that we were the only providers for United Healthcare at that time. And we were full service mental health clinics. So one of my partners was a psychiatrist and one was a psychologist. And then we established the 3 clinics. So all of these individuals, I used to call them the walking wounded because I even had Green Bay Packer players as clients. And so they would come in and they would usually be pretty highly educated, but they weren't happy. They didn't understand, why, if they had healthy children, if they were healthy, if they had good careers, a good marriage, why am I not feeling fulfilled? What's going on? And so as a result of all of that, I was looking at the stories we tell ourselves, the mindset, if you will, that goes into making up who we are. And I recognize that we do need to connect the dots, and the dots are between our physical, because if you don't have your physical health, the rest is going to be extremely difficult to come by. But connecting the dot between the physical, the emotional, the physical, physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. So those 4 components make up who we are as human beings. And if we haven't connected those dots very well, then you're going to be sitting on my couch, because I had them set up as living rooms so that it didn't feel like a clinic. And so you would be sitting there going, I don't understand why I'm not happy. And the happiness comes from going to your heart center. So we have, most of our lives are spent in our brains. And we spend 95% of every waking moment intellectualizing. And if we're not heart-centered, then we're not going to be happy. So we have to learn to shift from the intellectual to the heart.
Wow. So Lucy, can you sit back a little so we can see? There you go.
Yeah, sure.
I want to make sure we see your whole face and not just
the top of my head.
Right. So there is so much trauma out there, especially for children, like you said, those kinds of experiences and others. But today we're going through unique kinds of trauma. I think today kids, even if they have a happy home, they're faced with bullying at school, or they're faced with this whole pandemic thing where they had to be home and couldn't see their friends. How does that play into how to help them get to their heart center so that they're not so stressed out by all of this outside influence?
You know, it's a very good question, and it's not an easy question to answer.
I bet.
One of the reasons that I wrote the book was to address that. So in the story, which I think you've looked at the prequel.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Everyone, it's a story about mice and on their travels and how they help people do exactly what Lucy's talking about. But the really, one of the powerful things about it is the imagery is so vivid and so real. You almost feel like you're there in the story.
Right. Well, the person who did the illustrations is the assistant art director at Universal Studios.
Oh, wow.
And so I met him, and then I had to work with him for quite a while to get him to see my image. And that is the value. If you are going with traditional publishing, you don't get to choose your illustrator.
That's right.
You know, in most cases, they will choose somebody who has been successful for them and pair you up. And then it's their interpretation of your story. I knew who these characters were. I mean, I lived with them quite literally for a long time. So I knew they had to have empathy, and it had to be shown through the bodies of mice, but the empathy had to be there. And, you know, that's a very special skill. And fortunately, you know, the illustrator was able to see that and work with me on it. But in the beginning of the prequel, there's a little boy who has been separated from his mother and his sisters, and he doesn't know where they are, and he's terrified. He's doing what we have been doing for the last almost 2 years, which is false evidence appearing real. We're living in fear. And when you live in fear, you're in your head, you're not in your heart. And so they are teaching him to remember the good times, to remember what he used to do with his mother and sisters and dad and family members. And, you know, they would play music on Sundays and have Sunday dinners together. And so by shifting from a fear base into one that was love based, and that's your heart, that's coming from your heart, not your head, then you can begin to recognize and create the life that you want to live. But you have to get there. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, the Heart Math Institute has some wonderful pieces of, documentation of all of this, of how when we get into our heart has, I believe it's 40,000 brain cells that are actually in our hearts. And so
Wow.
when we shift from the brain to the heart, our heart is our intuition. And so our
Mhm.
heart is able to then guide us, through brain activity that's there, but also because now we're coming from an intuitive place as opposed to an intellectual place.
Mhm.
And when we make our decisions based on our intellect, it's almost always wrong. We can go grocery shopping that way, and we can go to the hardware store that way, but important life decisions need to come from the heart.
I so agree with that, but it's so hard to teach someone, especially someone who has been through trauma, whether I would like to just put this out there that all trauma is not equal. And sometimes something that other people may think of as a minor trauma can be a major, major trauma to the person it happened to.
Exactly.
And if we look at that, it's so difficult. I know that for many years, I lived in a world of depression. I suffered from depression, and I had no idea how to get out of it. I didn't take medication because I didn't like it. And somewhere along the right way, I came across this idea that you're talking about, although I didn't hear it the way you're presenting it. I wish I had. And I began to start thinking about what I wanted to happen and how I wanted things to be and what I could do. And I literally don't have a lot of happy memories of childhood, but I do of being an adult.
Mhm.
So how exactly, how long have you been doing this, and how involved is it to take someone who's been through trauma and get them to that place?
Well, I'm working with a number of individuals right now. And without giving away identities, I will tell you that it is a lengthy process.
Mhm.
In one case, I have a person who had both a mother and a father murdered,
Oh man.
and they were young, when this happened. And so trust is like this huge issue. Can I trust anyone?
Sure.
And how do I stay safe? So
Yeah.
those are predominant themes. I'm very good at what I do. And, I think people think of me as a friend and not as a therapist because of
Mm.
the way I do my work. So, you and I as a client and therapist don't have a traditional. I used to have a guy when I was in Green Bay
Mhm.
that would drive to see me from Chicago. He'd get
Mm.
off work Friday early afternoon, get in the car, drive 3 hours. I always took him at the very end of my day, and he would come in, and like I said, it was set up as a living room. And so he would come in and flop on the couch and say, "Okay, doctor, I'm here." And, it was such fun working with him because he was in the entertainment business in Chicago. And so he had a personality that was just bigger than life to begin with, but he had a lot of trauma that was in his past. And he needed to have someone work with him that he could trust
Mhm.
and that would gently, take him through the process. And I guess that's my gift is, I believe I can gently bring people through. One of the things that I have shared, and I don't know whether this came out on Margot's show when you and
Mhm.
I were on the show
Yep.
together, but about 7 years ago, my husband has been deceased for 4.
Mm. Okay.
And he fought cancer for 12 years. And so I'm a very resilient person. And I teach resiliency as a result of that, because I think what you've experienced, you can teach. If you've never gone through it, it's pretty difficult to say, do as I say,
Mhm.
because you've not experienced it.
Mhm.
But one of the things that came across in the end of his life was, as an energy healer, I was called to, we had admitted him to the hospital the night before. And this is like 7 years ago now.
Mhm.
And so 3.5 years before he died, he was admitted. And they called me to ICU the very next morning. And they said, you need to get here immediately. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh,
And so I get there and they say he has an hour and a half to live. As an energy healer, and this is rare. I would say that I have a gift that I don't even understand myself. But they left me alone with him because he only had an hour and a half. The reason is he had pericardial effusion. So he had 500 cc's of fluid crushing his heart. Had he not been an athlete, he would have already died. But his heart was bigger than normal. But his legs were modeling already. So they could tell by how purple they were that he had very little time left. So they left me. I heard my guides, my little angels that talk to me all the time. I heard them say, put your right hand on the top of his head, put your left hand on his heart. And he had 78% oxygen level. In order to do surgery, to take the fluid off, you have to have 98%. And it's not done with just putting an oxygen mask on. So I did what I was told to do. I had no idea what was going to happen. It took 30 seconds to change his oxygen level from 78% to 98%.
wow.
The doctors came running down the hall because they had no idea what had happened. And I'm still standing there. And they said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just doing energy work. And they said, we can now take him to surgery. And he lived another 3.5 years.
Oh.
So what I tell people is when you are in alignment, like you have chakras in your body. So you have 6 in your body. The 7th one is above your head. And then you have another group of them that go to 12. So the 12th chakra is actually divine energy. So when we are in total alignment, then divine energy can come through us. I become a channel. I'm not doing it. It's divine energy doing it. And it wasn't time for my husband to die. And it was also time for doctors to see that healing doesn't always come through pharmaceuticals. It doesn't always come through surgery. Sometimes there is divine intervention. And this was one of those times. And so they also obviously needed to see divine intervention at work. And I believe that, the book that I wrote teaches people how to change their mindset if they want a different life. I think the therapy I do is such that allows people to work with me to overcome traumas. And I think the energy work is just saying that there are powers so much greater than what we understand that are out there. We are just human beings. And stress the being.
Talk about those energy levels and the chakras. Talk about that because I have heard of that before. And can an individual learn as much as possible about those?
Absolutely.
As opposed to if I can't come into your office and be your patient, even though you could probably.
I do everything by Zoom or by
I was
phone.
going to say you could probably do it by Zoom also.
Yes,
but
I do.
But shouldn't we also be in charge of some of that?
Absolutely. And I do, if somebody wants to work with me, I will teach them how to use their chakras. They're energy centers. Okay. And when we have a blockage, let's just use the root chakra to begin with. That's at the base of the spine, right around your tailbone. And so that is what gives your body the energy to do whatever it needs to do each and every day. If your root chakra is blocked because you're not connected, like say, to the earth, I work with people and how to connect, get out into nature, walk in the grass, dig in the soil, do things with trees and plants, because that is our root. That is what it's like a taproot. And so it goes down into us, holding us in place so that we can move around freely, but we're not floating. And if you've ever known a person who channels, past lives, for instance, or who is a tarot card reader or is a fortune teller of some sort, in many, many, many cases, they're not grounded, they're not rooted. And so they end up with weight problems. They end up with health problems. And all of that is coming because they're not attached to the earth. They're free floating. So your energy has to be balanced. And so it's balanced from the root all the way through the crown. And the crown is what opens you up to receiving divine messages. There's a park that I go to on a regular basis that's close to where I live. And all during the pandemic, I would go there. And I had the most amazing encounters with animals. And there were 3 manatees that came in. And a friend was there with me. And he and I observed a male manatee that had rushed in where these 2 females had come in. And they were within feet of us. It was maybe 7 feet of water at the most. And he made love to both of them. And then all 3 of them swam away. So the babies were born the first part of August or first part of July, because it's like an 11-month gestation period for manatees. There have been amazing animal encounters there. But the neatest thing is we can be taking pictures. And so there might be a lot of people taking pictures there. When I have my phone, which is my camera, on, and I'm taking a picture, probably at least 75% of the time, there will be an orb, which is a spiritual entity. And the orbs can be blue, they can be white, they can be yellow, but I have the most amazing pictures of orbs. And somebody standing next to me can be shooting it at the same location. They will not have an orb. So orbs appear to people, again, who are in alignment with divine energy. So when you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, and the energy fields are moving back and forth, you will be contacted by spirit, by guides, by nature. You know, it can be a nature sprite, it can be your guardian angel, but the orbs will be there.
Well, that's really fascinating also, because I think that it's hard for a lot of human beings to take that kind of leap and go to that place. We have, over the centuries, we have tried to kind of beat that out of ourselves, as if it's, that's your intuition is not worthwhile. When you say, I have a bad feeling about this, I recently did. I was with a family member, and we were out looking at houses, and I just had a bad feeling about not the house itself, but the neighborhood, the house next door. And I said, I don't think you should put that on your list. It's not for you. And I don't feel, and mostly, not all, but mostly my family would be like, what are you talking about? You have a feeling. What has that got to do with anything? And so I would love to see more people accept that and understand that and get to that point where they tap into their intuition. So so one of the things that that we do is we walk the dog, and we walk the dog in our local area, which is full of trees, and we live more in a rural. It's not far from shopping, but it's quite rural where we are. And it's just wonderful. But we also go to the park. And so at the park, if it's a nice day, it will be full. There will be lots of other people, lots of other dogs and whatnot. And, I joke to people all the time and say that the out of doors is exactly where it belongs. And that's why we have windows. So we go through them at it. But I do go into it. And I go into it, Lucy, precisely because I feel a connection. It's not that I feel like I want to go camping or I want to go fishing. Those are not things that I do. But I go out into it because it's kind of an extension of, as a child, that's where I went, was my refuge, just going outside. So
you're reconnecting.
Yeah, and I think that somehow we have to get more people reconnected to Mother Earth, because things are not going well.
No, and I think she's letting us know that we need to reconnect with her because of that very reason. We have a lot of environmental issues that are on the table now. They've been coming for a very long time, and we've looked the other way in the name of profit usually. And so we're going to be paying the consequences if we don't, begin to really remedy the situation. But I do think, that is who we are. We are human beings, okay? Human by nature, but we are a divine being. And so it's linking those two. It's helping us reconnect and maybe connect the dots as to who we really are as a human. And we are so much more than we give ourselves credit for. We think of ourselves as just a physical body that marches through life from birth till death. And we are infinitely more than that.
Yes. So we're coming to the end of the show now. What else can you tell us about the book and the inspiration? I mean, you've talked a little bit about your work and whatnot, which was, I think, the inspiration. But talk about writing the book for a minute.
Well, when I started writing the book, and this you'll smile at, I had a person that was important in my life at that time who channeled. He actually was a PhD, lived in Malibu, and I would go to him periodically with questions. And so I had asked him, I was getting ready to start submitting the book, and I had asked him if it was the right time. And so he gets his information from your angels. And so he said, no. He said, this is not the right time. You will know when it is. And so I was crushed. I put all of the pages away. I thought, okay, I'm going to trust in divine intervention here. And I got busy with just my life. And it wasn't until many years later, actually in 2012, that another friend basically said, if you haven't done everything you want to do in this lifetime, what's one thing that you feel like you need to go do? And it was to finish the book. And so it came out as an ebook in 2013. And I had so many people that loved it that said, please put it as a book because I want to sit with my grandchildren or my children and I want to read it with them and help them understand what it is, what it means. And so it then came out in 2020 as a book. And like I said, with the illustrations totally different than the ebook illustrations. I had two totally different people do illustrations and then added some different things into the book. So it came out as basically a second edition. And I would say that when you write, I mean, the characters are obviously very real to me, but it's you. It's kind of your story coming through your characters. And so I believe that I am all those things, that the characters represent love, truth, and wisdom. And I believe that that is basically who I am. I represent love, truth, and wisdom. And at the end of the book, and I've heard this over and over again in the last couple of years now, is people are discovering that the only reason that we are alive. I mean, if I have one person that's an angel communicator that I have on my podcast, and she says this, that the angels want us to understand that our lives are to be full of joy and happiness. And we're here to play. And we forget that. Children know that. And I would say those that maybe have Alzheimer's know that. But someplace in between, we forget our reason for being. And so in the book ends with Brian understanding that the only reason we're here is to love one another.
Well, I hate to have to leave it there. We're at the end of the show, but the book is really fabulous, everyone. And I will have links to it and to all of Lucy's channels where you can connect with her. And this is a conversation that we should be having with ourselves and maybe with our significant others and our children, because the reality is, I believe also that we're here to be happy and to have joy. And sometimes we have things that have happened to us that that are too dark and too overwhelming, and we don't know how to break out of that to get back to where the happiness is. Sometimes there are people who don't even believe it, I'm sure. So I hope anyone listening here, if you feel that way, you should contact Lucy. This is something that is really important, not just to each individual life, but to everyone around us, because we're all, we didn't even get into that, but we're all connected. Right. So maybe we'll have Lucy back and we'll talk a little bit more about this subject. And I will share again Lucy's book, The Travels of Miss Twiggs, and the story behind it, because it's really so important. If nothing else, this book and today's show with Lucy is something for parents to say to themselves, how can I make sure that my children have this ability to continue play, don't give it up, and to be happy and joyful.
Right. Because we'll take that into our adult lives and therefore be probably happier and healthier.
And save the planet. So Lucy,
yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And
Thank you.
Perhaps we'll do this again.
All right. Take good care.